I'm gonna need some of that time you borrowed from me. Unless you want us to die on the way to our execution.
Humans in the future have undergone genetic modification to halt aging at 25. The only catch is that they only have a year left to live after they reach the age of 25. A timer is attached to a person's forearm, representing their life, and time is now the world's money. The poor live from paycheck to paycheck, while the wealthy can essentially live forever, figuratively. When Will awakens, he discovers he has less than a day left. He bows down and bids a happy 50th birthday to his mother, Rachel. When they begin discussing money, their joy's cut short. Rachel reminds Will of the payments and loans they have and states that she only has 3 days left. She's reassured by Will that he'll find the money. Rachel promises to pay back a loan and to work away for 2 days. To give her extra time, she informs Will that they must meet at a bus station. She then gives him half an hour so he may buy a good meal. Will gives her a final kiss before leaving for work. Will meets Maya, a little girl, on his way to work. When she requests for 1 minute, Will kindly grants her 5 minutes and smiles as he walks away. When he gets to work, he meets up with Burrell, his friend. Will manufactures time storage devices at a factory. He checks off and gets paid after a long day at work. When he realizes his money's insufficient, he asks for more, but the distributor informs him that the quotas grew, but Will was unable to meet it. Later on, Will heads to a nearby bar where a few men invite him to gamble, but he declines. He reminds one of the men he owes Will an hour before setting him down. After an hour, Will meets with Burrell. Burrell, who has been purchasing drinks for everyone, is inebriated. He claims that the man has lived for more than a century. When Will notices someone staring at the man, he chooses to let Henry know that someone is observing him. The man's drawing too much attention, so Will orders him to go, but he resists. All of the patrons at the bar rush out as a gang of men enter. Burrell informs Will that they are robbers and extortionists known as Minutemen. Will is pulled away by Burrell, but he plans to stay and observe. After giving Burrell his word that he wouldn't do something foolish, Burrell walks away. Henry's told by the leader, Fortis, that he wants his time and is even willing to give Henry a fighting chance. Henry looks queasy and goes to the restroom. A Minuteman keeps watching while he throws up. Abruptly, Will charges in, knocks the man unconscious, and drags Henry away with him. Fortis and his soldiers pursue Will and Henry as they flee. They sneak into an abandoned structure, climb over a barrier, and make their way out. The Minutemen are pursuing them closely and nearly catch up with them before giving up, when one of the men claims to have identified Will to Fortis. As Will and Henry get to know one another, Henry reveals his age, 105. He justifies his impulsive actions by stating that his intellect is worn out and that he wishes to die. Will becomes irate, realizing that he and his mother need to work many jobs in order to make ends meet just to live one more day. After that, Henry divulges the details of their horrifying society. Rich individuals raise the expense of living, causing the poor people to continue dying, which in turn, rich people get more time. The truth is that everyone has plenty time to themselves. However, the power and wealthy are oblivious due to their greed and lust for immortality. Henry asks Will what he'll do if he had the same amount of time as him. Will responds that he won't squander it like Henry did if he had that much time. Henry thinks about what Will says, and the two get rest. Morning comes and Henry decides to give all but 5 minutes of his time to a sleeping Will. When Will eventually wakes up, he finds he has more than a century left in his time. He searches for Henry and finds him perched on a bridge. Henry smiles as his last few seconds tick down and he falls into the river. Will visits Burrell later and finds Greta, Burrell's wife, holding their newborn. When Will asks for Burrell, he tells him how much time he has. After Will discusses what happened the previous evening, Burrell questions what he has planned. After discovering the truth, Will plans to bring justice. Will gives Burrell 10 years of time before heading out. Burrell looks across the street at the bar, eyeing it with his newly added time. Meanwhile, Rachel pays a loan of 2 days and attempts to ride the bus, but finds that she can't afford the fare as the prices have gone up. She begs the driver and the other passengers, but they all turn away. Desperate, she takes off running. The two are in a race against time, and with every second and every step, death draws closer for Rachel. They finally get to see one another. They run as fast as they can, but death beats Rachel and Will. A lifeless Rachel falls into Will's arms. Knowing that they were only a few seconds away from living the life they've always wanted, Will sobs. While his mother has ran out of time, Will now has more than he could have ever imagined. Timekeepers recover Henry's body from the river the next day. Senior timekeeper Raymond and junior timekeeper Yeager examine the scene. Just before their departure, Raymond notices a camera atop the bridge. In the meantime, Will is sitting in a car with a fresh haircut and a new suit on. They cross the boundary separating the various social classes, the time zone. They cross several borders on his journey, and each one has a toll that gets more expensive. The last border costs Will a year, and the driver welcomes him to the city of New Greenwich. The driver asks Will what his true intentions are for coming to New Greenwich, and Will answers he wants to make the people of New Greenwich pay. The city's entirely different from what Will's used to. Still accustomed to live with little time, he takes off running as soon as he gets out of the automobile. He glances at his arm and begins to behave more like someone who has all the time in the world. Still, he had already attracted the attention of Sylvia. Will walks into a hotel and requests a suite. In his luxurious room, Will wakes up still with 105 years. Despite being in a room with the finest outlook and the coziest of mattresses, the unexpected death of his mother continues to haunt him. He tastes fine dining and beverages for the first time in his life. He pays for his meal and tips the waitress a week. The waitress remarks that Will acts differently from other people and that he does everything a bit too quickly. Will replies that he doesn't finish fast in the things that matter. Will needs to change into a new outfit before he can join the casino. In the security footage at the timekeeper's headquarters, they spot Will. According to Yeager, a man entered New Greenwich by crossing multiple borders. They gather more information about Will, and Raymond states that he knows Will's father. Will walks inside and takes a seat at a poker table. As the dealer deals, Felipe, a billionaire with eons in time, acquaints himself with Will. Will's winnings after a few rounds of poker amounts to over 2 centuries. Felipe increases the pot by 50 years. Despite this, Will calls with total confidence, and the river turns out to be the 6 of diamonds. Will's focus shifts from the game to the lovely dame, Sylvia, who sits beside Felipe. Felipe rolls up his sleeves, revealing almost 10 millennia's worth of time. He then talks about the immeasurable gap between the poor and the rich, justifying it as natural selection. He raises 2 more centuries. Will bites and calls, leaving his arm with a mere 30 seconds left. The outcome favors Will, and he receives a millennium of time. This added excitement to Felipe's boring life. When he sees Will focusing on Sylvia, he wonders whether he believes she's his mother, grandma, or spouse. All Will says is that she's gorgeous. Felipe introduces her as his daughter, and she invites him to a party. Will uses his earnings the following day to buy a brand new car, which he drives to Felipe's palace. 3 generations of ladies who appear to be sisters are introduced to him there. Will looks out of place among the high-class crowd. Sylvia approaches and saves him from a lonely night. As they converse more and get to know one another better, they end up dancing. When she inquires as to whether he's from the ghetto, Will neither admits nor denies her claims. Sylvia opens up to him about her meaningless life and how the time that she has shackles her when it's supposed to grant her freedom. Felipe and his spouse keep a close eye on the two as this is going on, forcing Sylvia to follow Will outdoors to the beach. Sylvia and Will strip off and enter the water. The moonlight glows on their nude bodies as they float on the waves, inches apart. Sylvia pulls away from him, but the waves draw her in. The romantic moment's broken when someone yells out from the shore. When they go back, Felipe invites Will to play poker with him, but Will's confronted by the timekeepers as they storm in. In an office, they seat him, and Raymond introduces himself. He asks him how he got more than a millennium's worth of time and why he's in New Greenwich. Will responds truthfully, stating that Henry handed it to him before killing himself, and the remaining money he earned playing poker. Raymond questions his justification, seizes his time, and puts him under arrest. Will questions him as he leaves, wondering why he looks into suicide while ghetto killings occur each and every day. His comment shocks Raymond since it makes him think of Will's father. Will then attacks the timekeepers guarding him and rushes out to hold Sylvia hostage. The two head out through the kitchen and get into his car. Raymond rams Will's car, causing them to lose control. Will expertly maneuvers while on reverse, barely dodging an incoming truck. They lose the timekeepers and hide underneath a bridge. Will asks for Sylvie's time, but she refuses. Morning comes and they drive along the highways and run over traffic spikes. The tire punctures and they crash. Fortis and his men approach the unconscious couple. He steals time from Sylvia, but they leave in a hurry, leaving her with only 30 minutes. Will gives her a few minutes and they run off to get more time. With 3 minutes left, Will knocks on Burrell's door. Greta responds, telling Will that alcohol poisoning is the reason for Burrell's death. Sylvia's worried since she doesn't have much time left. Will notices her earring, and they rush to the jewelry dealer. The jewelry dealer underpays them and gives them only 2 days because he can tell they're desperate. Will accepts, and they immediately hide as they hear the timekeeper's sirens. While strolling throughout the city, they discuss Sylvia's family business. Will asks how much they're worth, and she replies it's too much to the point that knowing it won't matter. Will calls Raymond and asks for Felipe to transfer 1,000 years to the ghetto city in exchange for Sylvia. Raymond tells him that if he keeps going, he will die just like his father did. Will claims that his father died in a fight, but Raymond claims that Will's father was something more dangerous. Night arrives and Sylvia makes herself at home at Will's apartment. When she inquires about his family, Will shares details regarding the death of her mother. He remembers how his father was a gambler too, but in a different game. His father would play a game akin to gambling, but using his time. His father won a lot, but his acts of generosity caused his death. When they discover they're roughly the same age, their bond gets stronger as they share more about one another's history. Morning comes, and he observes if Felipe holds up his end of the deal. Will sees no time transfers, leaving Sylvia disappointed with her father. Despite not receiving the time, Will still intends to let Sylvia go. He escorts her to the phone booth, giving her a gun as a farewell gift, and she returns the favor with a kiss. When her father answers the phone, she berates him for not giving Will what he wants. As they talk, Will's behind her, oblivious of Raymond pointing a gun at him. When Sylvia turns and sees Raymond, she shoots him without thinking twice. Will points a gun at a bleeding Raymond, but instead of taking his time, he gives some to Raymond, and the two drive off using his car. Sylvia inquires about his plans while they're parked off the main road. Since they're in a cop car, they play the part of a timekeeper, blocking an unfortunate driver. Sylvia gets too comfortable with the gun and fires a shot, scaring Will and the driver. They take the time from the passenger and drive off in the new car. The two watch the news about them later that day while sitting in the back seat. Will says he can return her, but Sylvia refuses to go back to her father and her boring life. With more time on his hands, Will leans in for a second kiss. In his office, Felipe talks to his partners and assures them that he didn't pay the ransom. They doubt his capabilities to resolve this issue, but Raymond enters the room before Felipe gets a chance to explain himself. He informs Felipe that her daughters express no desire for rescue. Felipe apologizes and says that Stockholm Syndrome is to blame for his daughter's obstinacy. Raymond does not budge and tells him he's going to arrest his daughter. Felipe tries to bribe him with his time, but Raymond remains uninterested and leaves. Will shows Sylvia the correct way to shoot a gun the following day. They discuss Will's idea to give time to the people, and she says she can get him the time he needs. At the neighborhood lending company, a truck slams through the glass panels. The two successfully carry out a heist, taking as much time-storing devices as they can. They encourage the borrowers to get as much time as they want, and they all come rushing in. Later that day, Will gives time to Greta, Maya, and even the Timeline distributor, who gives people time as charity. Meanwhile, Fortis will not stop harassing and killing people for time. Then he notices a 10-year reward for finding Will and Sylvia displayed. Felipe, in the meantime, watches the news about his daughter's continuous pursuits to steal from him. Later that evening, the motel where the two are staying is surrounded by Raymond and the timekeepers. When Will and Sylvia realize they're being surrounded, they flee by jumping out of the window. Raymond chases them through the dimly lit passageways and streets. As they ascend the rooftops, a gunfight breaks out. They manage to board a bus, losing Raymond. Fortis keeps looking for Will and Sylvia. He interrogates a group, threatening to steal their time. When one dies, a man steps up and says he has information about their whereabouts. Sitting on the couch at the motel, the two discuss the difficulties they face. They both accept that if they get caught, they'll die. During their time together, they almost died every time, and Sylvia felt more alive than ever. Fortis and his men suddenly knock down the door. Feeling generous, Fortis gives Will a chance to play for his life. Fortis rolls up his sleeve for a game of strong arm, and Will accepts his challenge. Will struggles up to his final seconds, then he turns it around when Fortis loses focus. His subordinates approach the table, and the fear in his eyes grows. Will grabs a gun from his ankle and shoots everyone while siphoning Fortis dry. Sylvia and Will watch as prices continue to rise from a rooftop. Will feels hopeless, saying that the rich will just increase the cost of living every time they steal. He says that only 1,000,000 years will make a difference. Sylvia agrees, but she has another idea. The following day, Felipe enters a building with a plethora of bodyguards surrounding him. Sylvia catches their attention and asks for this father. Among the guards is Will, who points a gun directly at Felipe's head. After giving the guards the order to down their firearms, they kidnap Felipe. A time vault with a 1,000,000-year device is located in his office. Felipe tries to clarify that if that time ends up in the wrong hands, society will fail. He says that there will always be someone willing to sacrifice people for a shot at immortality. Will cannot contain his anger and points a gun at him, but he recoups his calmness. Will tells Felipe that immortality is not worth the life of even a single individual. Then the two head out. Police cars begin to blockade the main road in the meantime. Will and Sylvia's automobile is shot at by the timekeepers, but they miraculously escape unhurt, pushing through the border toll booth. Raymond pursues them with perseverance. They arrive at the ghetto, and as they're about to reach safety, Raymond intercepts and crashes into them. After walking out unharmed, Will asks Maya to share the 1,000,000 years. Raymond aims a gun at the two, but the swarming crowd obscures his view, making it possible for them to flee. Raymond takes over an automobile, and the pursuit goes on. At last, they collide in the center of the street. Raymond acknowledges that he grew up in a ghetto and that he's learned how to escape poverty. He also learned about the harsh reality that the wealth gap between the rich and the poor needs to be kept. Raymond discovers during their conversation that he forgot to add more time during the chase, and as a result, his time has run out. He dies on the spot, and the two attempt to replenish their time. With only a few seconds remaining, they sprint in the direction of Raymond's car, which is far away. Will gets there first and replenishes his time. Next, he races to Sylvia, who's running out of time. Just in time, the two sprint into each other's arms and they get to live another day. Citizens are now crossing borders into more expensive zones. The timekeepers observe their social system beginning to fall apart. The impoverished no longer count down the minutes as time begins to spread equally. Sylvia and Will carry on as usual, heading to a larger time bank this time. If you enjoyed today's video, I'd love for you guys to like this video and become a subscriber.